Good morning, guys. I hope you're doing well. This morning, another Saturday with the Croissant Files live. I hope this one will be interesting. You know that there's a couple of things that we need to talk about. Um, what? So as you may see on the presentation slide, we'll talk obviously about tariffs that rocked again the market. The trade war between Canada and the US intensifies at the moment. We'll talk about geopolitics as well. Basically, now peace in Ukraine seems to be a long shot at this time. So this will be interesting as well, and we'll move to the markets and the market dashboard as well. So like everyone usually says at this time, without further ado, let's start if everyone is here. So let's go. And we'll start with what? With the Formula One Grand Prix tomorrow in Australia. So this will be at 1 p.m. I believe, US Eastern Time. I won't be watching live, but we have the result of the quali this morning. Again, we have McLaren, very strong position, monopolizing the first line. Verstappen, I mean, you could give him a truck, he would be still not very far from the front row anyway. We have a couple of surprises. Tsunoda, for instance, fifth on the V-Carb. Interesting, specifically in comparison to Liam Lawson, the rookie that was preferred versus compared to him to get the Red Bull seat. He's only 18 at this point, so we know how Red Bull is very rapid to fire if you don't perform. And that's another similarity with trading and portfolio management, specifically in the hedge fund industry. So we'll see how it goes after a couple of weeks, a couple of F1 Grand Prix. We have Albon on 6. Interesting as well, because that just shows the progress made by Williams. And we can be sure that once Sainz will be accustomed to the car, it will get much better as well. We have Leclerc and Hamilton, 7th and 8th, which probably reflects the level of the car at this point. A good point for Gasly on Alpine, which starts 9 with much better already than where they started last year, at the back of the grid. Now Gasly and Alpine seems to be starting at the place they left the last season, which is already a great improvement. Then after that we have the rookies. First rookie is Hadjar, the new French rookie driver for V-Carb. For quite a good performance. 14 we have Mick Doohan for Alpine, not too bad. Kimi Antonelli for Mercedes, while Russell is 4th on the grid, just for comparison. Bortoleto is 15th. Kind of probably again reflect the value of the car, because 15 and 17th, basically Hülkenberg is a very good driver, so that's already a good point. And then Lawson, we already talked about him, and we have Ocon and Berman at the back of the grid, which again seems to be reflecting the value of the car at this point. So this gets exciting. I won't give you some feedback on Formula One every weekend, but I thought I wanted to do this one for the first week of the year, for the first week of the first F1 week of the season, and I'll give you an update next week, maybe, if I think about it. Let me check if there are people already here. Yes, we have Attilio, we have Daniel, the usual suspects, maybe Cliff here as well. So that's pretty cool. So we can start and stop talking about Formula One. So a couple of things around the United States. First, with Zelensky formally apologizing for the issue happening during the meeting with Trump. Zelensky seems to be coming back to more, let's say, acceptable behavior. I mean that just because he kind of accepted to a ceasefire, but we'll talk about that right after that. Next point is US aid. Ned, we talked about it before. We've seen that the funding has been cut by the government to USAID and to the National Endowment for Democracy. But like I said before, it was mostly cutting the funding for the left-leaning NGOs that are basically doing the soft power for the Democratic Party. So NGOs are the soft power for the Democratic Party, the same way as Hollywood, for instance, is the soft power on the foreign outside of the US. So they have now cut the funding for their political opponent, which kind of makes sense. I mean, the government agencies doesn't have to make the promotion for any kind of party, but this USAID and NED doesn't go away. USAID and again NED are one of the key tools for the US for foreign influence. So it was obvious from the beginning that these two agencies would never go away, but redirected. And this is what Marco Rubio confirmed this week by saying that USAID and NED are not going away, they are streamlined, if you will. Whatever that means, but that means that they will keep on doing the same job, influencing, overthrowing foreign government for the CIA. Business as usual, I would say. Next point, Starlink. I wanted to give you a little talk about this because I read a quite interesting article this week about Starlink, how Starlink has become a major tool for the United States in projecting its power by controlling the communication on a worldwide basis. Because not only this will change the communication industry, it can render totally obsolete the terrestrial communication network by providing anything from space, and this would be available to everyone on the planet. So China has identified this as soon as 2020. Starlink was last launched in 2019, and in 2020 China launched a similar program and is starting developing quite aggressively as well a similar program. I don't have the name, I couldn't find it, but they're starting to it's a major opposition to the hegemony that the US would like to establish in terms of communication in the space. And with the war in Ukraine, we've seen how important this is, specifically in an event in a war, because if Starlink would not be available for recognition, intelligence work for the Ukrainian army, it would collapse right away. They would not be able to, again, collecting and gathering intelligence on the Russian army. So it would collapse much faster than it actually does at this time. So this is very important, I believe, in terms of geopolitics for the future. And like Trump is acknowledging by focusing on China, this is again another way to see that the future will be between the US and China, and Russia will be a side player. And I believe that Russia again is between Asia and Europe, and probably, if if let's say relationship can be normalized between Russia and Europe, would be very happy to have both one feet on both continents, I would say. So I think that that was a very interesting article, and I really a very, very deep understanding of the play between China and the U.S. But obviously, I cannot tell you everything that I saw in this article. So we'll move on with Eastern Europe. You've probably seen that Ukraine, like I mentioned before, is ready now to accept a 30 days ceasefire. However, the big issue is that the US wants a ceasefire. Ukraine accepts the idea of a ceasefire. The only issue is on the other side. I mean, you need to be two sides to make peace. However, Russia is not ready to make peace at this time. And why? Because they are winning on the battleground. So they are at this time, they have at this time regained 86% of the Kursk region that Ukraine was occupying in Russia. And it was really interesting the way they did it. The irony is that they used a pipeline that Ukraine had shut down themselves. So they used the pipeline to move their troops inside the pipeline and exit behind the lines, Ukrainian lines, and cut almost all of it. There's only now a small corridor available for the Ukrainian soldiers, troops to exit that that little pocket where they could be encircled. So now again, they have reclaimed 86% of the land. The last chip for negotiation for Ukraine is gone. They have nothing to do. So now Russia is progressing in Kursk, is still progressing in the eastern region of Ukraine, where they have conquered basically the regions that they wanted to have. So they are in a position of strength at this time, and they have no incentive to negotiate a peace agreement or even a ceasefire. Some of the generals in the Russian army have declared that what for? If it is to rearm Ukraine during 30 days to be able to fight again, no way. So the Russians have been deceived a couple of times, like, before any pro-Ukrainian tells me that I am a pro-Putin. I will remember that both German Chancellor Angela Merkel and the former French President François Hollande mentioned that the Minsk I and the Minsk II agreement, the objective was only to give the time to Ukraine to rearm in the let's say the anticipation of a conflict with Russia. They have been misled with the Istanbul negotiations, where they were almost ready to sign a peace deal only 2 months after the operation start, until Bojo came to Ukraine saying, no, don't sign this agreement, we will help you fight against the Russians and you will win. So this is where we are now, and so that's why I said in introduction that probably peace at this time is a long shot, unless Putin can get all what he demanded actually from the very beginning, which is a total dismantling of the Ukrainian army and get Ukraine into a neutral state, which is kind of where we are leading now. You have the photo at the bottom where you have Zelensky and Mark Rutte, the head of NATO at this time. And Rutte said that Ukraine in NATO is not an option. and will not be. And he even mentioned that the relationship with Russia will have to be normalized after the war. So everyone is already projecting themselves into a situation after the war. But I believe that the war will only end at the conditions of the Russians. Again, dismantling of the Ukrainian army and Ukraine as a neutral state. Why? Because again, this sees Russia that is a position of strength at this time. Usually the one that is asking for a ceasefire or a peace treaty is the one that is losing the war. And so that is not looking good for NATO and the West at this time. So we'll see if the war continues, but again, that probably feeds into what I've said before, is that the US wants to focus on China and will probably, if the war continues, subcontract the war to the European countries, which is what they seems to be very willing to do at this point. So I mean, the situation in Kursk is really bad for Ukraine. They have lost 65,000 of their best troops. They had sent elite battalions and units there to be able to control the Kursk region again, to get that bargaining chip for negotiations at the end of the war. They don't have it anymore, so that's a big loss for both Ukraine and the West. Consequently, that Russia that is not really ready to sign a peace treaty at this point. Trump said that he will actually expand the Biden sanctions against Russia on Russian oil, gas, and banking sector. We know how it worked, and I will say this in the introduction of the economy section. Or maybe I can say it there. It just didn't work. I mean, no, we have the result for 2024, and we know now on the economic side that so the latest IMF report says that Russia has now surpassed Japan as the fourth economy in the world in terms of purchasing power. So obviously, the sanctions didn't work. This is what I said in an article published on LinkedIn in 2022, a couple of months after it started, and when Europe started implementing sanctions. I said before that it would hurt more Europe than it would hurt Russia. Again, I was, insulted and everything, but this is exactly what happened. So there's no reason why what didn't work before would work now, specifically now that Russia is in a total war economy. It's ready. They have found other ways to sell their oil. India, for instance, that is reselling oil to Europeans with a premium, obviously. The banking sector, I mean, they have cut Russia out of the SWIFT system. Was not a big deal because Russia had already de-dollarized for quite some time. So I don't know where it goes, but it looks like it looks a bit like desperation move, if you ask me, from the West, because they seem to realize that now they are losing the situation and probably not losing the narrative yet, but this is where we are going at this time. So now we can move on. So again, peace probably long shot at this point. I don't see why Putin would accept a peace agreement at this time without further guarantee. So let's talk about Europe. So in this context, Europe again reiterated their will to spend 800 billion to rearm themselves. It probably will be difficult. The European Parliament has not validated any of the funding sources that von der Leyen is talking about. So again, that is probably a long shot, but again, it's like I said last week, and I will repeat again, to me, it's the manufacture of consent for a greater European integration. In terms of European integration, you've seen what's happening in Romania, a total denial of democracy. You have this guy that is leading in the poll by a very wide margin. I mean, his poll shows him leading the potential elections by 41%, and he has now been officially denied running for the position. So this triggered a massive protest in Romania that have been repressed with violence by the police. I don't think the army was involved, but this is where the EU is going at this time. You know, you have the DSA so the Digital Service Agreement in Europe, which wants to control what you say on internet and X, basically, because what they're saying is that it was promoting non-democratic values from, for instance, in Germany with the last election, the AfD, the right-wing party, but this is not going with the European interests, so they start wanting to banning them, at least first from a speech point of view. You know that Orban and Fico, so both in Slovakia and Hungary, have a lot of troubles with Europe because they don't follow, you know, the main path, I would say. And now basically this guy where they say, okay, no, that is speech. I mean, I think the validation is his speech is not in line with the Romanian values, and that's enough to prevent him to running for election. Every totalitarian country works like this. So this is where Europe is going to now, and obviously they claim it's in favor of democracy. One little word on the Middle East. We still have massive massacres in Syria. So the current regime, you know, the guy that is both in suits and Al-Qaeda affiliate suit, I would say, running the country now, is massacring the former ethnicity of the former regime, the Alawites, but it's not only them. It's the Christians and the Shiites, because this guy is Sunni, and you know you have a rift in Islam between the Shiites and the Sunnis. For instance, between Saudi Arabia and Iran, this is two branches of Islam that have been fighting against each other from the beginning, claiming they are the right, the right version of Islam, I would say. So this is where we are. So they are massacring anything that doesn't think like them. I said it from the very beginning. You know, you don't change the. In French, we say, you don't change the stripes of a zebra. You know, the guy was a terrorist. Whether you put, a military equipment on him or a suit, this is the same guy behind, and this now is showing again his true colors. The irony is this. I mean, the EU that has been totally pointless there are still supporting this guy, saying that the massacre have been happening from the Alawites, the former reigning ethnicity, against the other ethnicities in Syria. That's totally insane, and this is where Europe again has fallen to. Now, what consequence does it have? Now, Israel is trying to establish corridor for its security. That's the claim that they are going with. This will give them the opportunity to occupy parts of Syria. Again, I've said it from the beginning, Syria is open for everyone to take at this point. And while they were favoring the current leader when he toppled Bashar al-Assad, now they are bombing HTS positions in Syria to occupy, I think that's called the Davis Corridor, which is supposed to be a buffer zone between Israel and Syria. So this is where we are now in terms of geopolitics. Maybe I can check for once, because so please let's talk about anything for Europe. Bonjour Nicolas, nice to see you. I cannot show the comments, but bonjour Nicolas. Daniel, I'm sorry I had to talk about Europe because Europe has fallen so low, it's insane. But we'll move on to the economy now. So economy, what can we say about economy? That's what I want. That's what I said just before. We have the global leading economies in PPP terms in trillions. So now we see that Russia has surpassed Japan. It was already the case in 2023, but the gap is. I couldn't find the graphic for 2024, but that numbers, you see that in 2023 that was already the case. Now the gap is just bigger at this point. So we still have China, then the US, India, and then Russia. So I'm sorry, Daniel, but we'll talk about Europe again, because Europe is pushing hard to get its CBDC in place. They have defined their objectives as October this year for the CBDC implementation, and that will be the open sky jail, where they will be able to control, to not only see but control everything that you spend, decide if you can spend on things, limit the way basically how you use and the money that you've earned. So that's the first step, So we've talked about, the dents in democracy with Romania. Now they are implementing the open sky jail with CBDC, and Europe is so bankrupt that now they are also considering stealing from private savings to finance I would say their crazy totalitarian project in Europe, that is the European Union, by tapping into, again, the private savings. And we have, a salvo of declaration from many European leaders, whether it's... So we had Christine Lagarde, obviously, von der Leyen, that we both see on this on the photo, but we also had Mario Draghi, the former head of the ECB and Goldman Sachs affiliate. There were also declarations from the former French finance minister, when he was still finance minister. So the rationale for them is that, okay, there's a lot of money sitting here, we need money, basically we'll take it. And it's kind of, for them, one of the ways they will accomplish Klaus Schwab dream that we'll talk about a lot in 2024, which is you will have nothing and you will be happy. Klaus Schwab, WEF motto and slogan. This is what the European Union is aiming to. That's really sad. So I was reading an article about this, and one of the guys was saying, get your money out of EU. And to be clear, this is what I did already 2024, because I saw that coming. there was already declaration not only this year but last year as well from many European leaders to tap into that private savings. And basically I sold everything that I had in Europe and took it back to the US. Now I send little parts of money to Europe when I need to, and basically that's it. I don't want to have anything to do with these crazy guys. So now we can come to the big part of, again, what happened, the intensification of trade war between the US and Canada. So US has implemented again additional tariffs against Canada on steel and aluminium. This was obviously not well received by Canada. Trump went as far, again, he reiterated that if Canada would be the 51st state, that there would be no tariffs at this point. I mean, it's interesting because, obviously you cannot make Greenland and Canada be part of the US in a single shot. You have to instill the idea progressively until this is, I would say, commonly accepted. That's the three phases of an idea. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is aggressively disputed. And then it is accepted as a fact. This is probably kind of the strategy that the US is going to, US and Trump. Obviously, I could say again that the NGOs specifically played a big part in Greenland, for the simple reason that they prevented the development in Greenland that, has massive resources in terms of oil, rare earth materials, a lot of things. But the NGOs and the green agenda prevented them to develop and exploit the resources, keeping them poor, which, fuels the let's say the resentment against Denmark. And now I guess that Trump wants to do the same thing with Canadian to chokehold them financially and economically for them to at some point be joining the US being a natural option, I guess. So going back to the tariffs, trade war tariffs between the US and Canada. So Trump pushed the heat a little more with the new tariffs. Canada implemented retaliatory tariffs. On top of that, they even went as far as saying that they would cut electricity supply to northern states of the US. So it's pretty intensifying, and this obviously adds some impacts on the market with another quite significant down week for the market this week, even though yesterday we bounced back a little bit. What can I say more about tariffs at this point? I've mentioned the retaliatory tariffs again. The chart at the bottom is produced by Augur Infinity. They are producing quite sexy charts, to be honest. And you can see that the prices for E-mini, so the S&P E-mini futures, the 10-year yield, the dollar CAD, so you have equity stocks, yields, and currency is following. They are all following the trade war intensity index that they developed, inverted obviously for this to match. But this is, so you can figure out from that the price action we had recently has everything to do with the trade war. I will mention it right now because I know that I will not talk about this in the market dashboard, or maybe I will. I don't remember exactly. But this also has an impact on oil prices. because tariffs are one way to reduce the global trade, and global trade, lower global trade, lower economic activity, lower energy prices to make the economy work. It can be sometimes as simple as that. So again, that's the story about the tariffs. I've already mentioned that. Just for comparison, we have the first term of Trump versus the second term of Trump. Obviously, it doesn't exactly start the same way. We'll see how it goes. But another interesting part is, do I have it that after? I'm not sure. We have gold. Maybe we have budget. Maybe I can talk about this now, because you know that in terms of debt, the United States will have to roll 9.2 trillion of debt this year in 2025, at a time where interest rates are pretty high, which will make it very expensive to roll. And I mentioned this again a couple of weeks, if not months before. That's kind of the time bomb that that the Biden administration's left to Trump, because they didn't renew long-term debt when they had to renew, and the interest rates were low, but they renewed at short-term, not locking low interest rate for the long term. So now this ticking time bomb will come into effect. One of the possible way for Trump to force interest rates going down is basically provoking a recession and hurting the economy, and of course the equity markets. So that's probably one way to do it. I don't know for sure, obviously, if that's the case, but there are indications that we are going that way. I won't talk about the gold import. We've talked about this already, but you see that the US real personal consumption, the consumption in the US is a main driver for growth, for GDP, and consumption is shrinking pretty significantly at this time. And we had in January or even February, I don't remember which are these numbers, I have noted this somewhere, but that inflation is also going down, which will make it easier for the Fed to cut rates if the equity markets are still tumbling in the next weeks or month. And probably that could be one of the way for the United States to renew its debt to a longer term or short term, depending on what they want to do, but to renew the debt at a cheaper interest rates than they are right now. Do I have anything else? No, maybe we can move on to the market. Yes, no, I won't talk about gold. So gold is going to the roof. We've seen that. We've made another new high this week, and gold usually is going up when you have periods of market stress. Specifically in terms of inflation, like we had now, we had the first month when inflation is down, but again, this probably signals some more market stress. So let's move on to the market now with a couple of maybe I can check your comments if you have. Daniel, you are already planning to fly away Europe. I get that, just, I didn't leave Europe about, when was it, 13 years ago for that specific reason. However, people often ask me if I would like to go back, and I say no, not in that situation. The big key is that the big issue for me is that all my kids that never really adjusted to the US culturally, I would say, because the cultural gap between France and the US is actually pretty significant. When we moved here, I didn't think that it would be that big, to be honest. So they wanted to go back to France because they came here as still pretty young, and they didn't adjust because they were already too French, and they kept a kind of idealized idea of France. So now they are all living back in Europe, to my concern, I would say, specifically for the future. I would really like them to, at some point, to rethink their position. Two of them are already rethinking it, so probably that's a good thing. But again, the way it evolves, it's not a good way. So maybe we can switch to the market before it's really late, and maybe for once we can stick to 1 hour. What do you think, guys? You think I can make it? Let's try. So Berkshire Hathaway, the largest cash pile ever, which is interesting considering the market action that we had before, that we have currently. So I won't comment this, but that was pretty a nice move from Warren Buffett. Another sign of stress in the equity markets is the volume of options that on the VIX calls that are spiking at this time. So everyone seems to buying protection at this time against the crash. So that's again another. If you need more, that's not a sign of market stress at this point. Other big sign of market stress is obviously the price of gold. We've seen that a lot of gold is coming back to the US. So first it was tensions on physical gold in the UK. Now there are tensions on physical gold in Switzerland. So first the US started repatriating gold from UK vaults, and now it's from Swiss gold as Swiss vaults as well. So a lot of tensions on the gold market. We broke two new highs. All-time new highs again this week, specifically on Thursday, slightly less yesterday. But we passed the 300,000 per ounce on gold, first time ever. So, again, another sign of market stress, obviously, because no one needs gold when everything is going fine. We also have a dollar decline, which is interesting because usually, the dollar is seen as a safe asset in terms of market stress. It doesn't seem to be this time, and this has to be coupled with what we've seen in the European equity markets, overperforming the US equity markets. I have these charts after that, so maybe I can show you maybe now if I don't have 20, we'll go after that, but it's too long. I mean, it will take me an hour to figure that out. So the US, which is usually a safe asset, and foreign markets basically overperforming the US markets, means that probably the US is seen as a non-safe market anymore. I mean, it's always relative, right? Compared to other markets, or is it a rebalancing? But the fact that the US is going down, probably a reallocation towards Europe and potentially Asia. I don't have the Asia I will need to put in my dashboard a section with foreign global, equity markets, but I believe that China is doing very well in terms of equity markets, so probably a relocation outside of the US at this time. So let's move on to the market dashboard, March 15, 2025. So where are we at this point? So it's another down week.